Welcome back. You're still watching the daily debate. As we did see in the past break, the outlets of Amman provided by the Ministry of Interior, as mentioned on screen, that you could be logging on the website and seeing the commodities and more specifically the things that are related to the academic year before it starts in the month of October. On the other hand, I'm honored to be having with me over the phone Dr. May Batran, the former member of Parliament, to be discussing the topic of today's episode. Dr. May, thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being with you.
Anytime. The pleasure is all mine. First of all, how did you see the importance of the providing of the government through the directives of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to be dispersing about 11 billion Egyptian pounds for about 9 million families starting from the month of September?
Egypt has launched a huge economical restructure program as well, and it is spilling over the less fortunate group of Egyptians at the economic base of the pyramid. Egypt has also, as you know, went through a huge program, Hayat Karima, which is the largest in history. It's the largest social program in history, and it's covering 4,000 villages in the various governorates of Egypt. And as a result of the international economic situation and the crisis between Russia and Ukraine, the Egyptian government is not leaving its Egyptian people, but still maintaining its sustainability and maintaining economic equity for the Egyptian people, and enhancing, as just mentioned, the direct food subsidies into the Tamween cards, into the food cards, to maintain food for less fortunate Egyptian families. And this, on an international level, Egypt has a repositioning there. You can see now in various European countries, people not having access to enough food oil for food, enough electricity, enough water. So Egypt is in a true disruptive position of its actual economic previous situation. And when I say disruptive, it's a deep intrinsic change of the Egyptian reality. It's a position where the government is minding people of lesser economic situation. They're making sure that they have the right housing, and this has also been a huge housing structure program. They're making sure it has those families have enough food that they need. They have the internet and communications needed for education as well. So it's a full-fledged program that Egypt has launched for the last couple of years. And what is happening at the beginning of this September is just an extra step of maintaining the Egyptian greater family and enhancing, putting money into the on a macroeconomic level into the market, making sure families are well fed, are in a good position as befits Egypt and its people on an international level.
Dr. May, you've mentioned Hayat Karima, the initiative by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to be impacting on the villages of Egypt, millions of villages or thousands of villages, affecting millions of people, like about 50 million Egyptians in the Egyptian villages. How do you see the importance of Hayat Karima, the initiative itself?
Hayat Karima translates in English as a decent life. And I would take it further into saying the Maslow pyramid of basic requirements and human needs. It always starts with housing, food and shelter, and then it goes up to self-actualization. And if I take the Maslow law of requirements and human needs to the Decent Life Hayat Karima initiative launched by the current government, it is a real message and a strong message saying that Egypt takes care of its own. Egypt is in a situation to launch the largest inherited social program that has ever been launched, not on an Egyptian level but on an international level. We are creating sustainability, environmental awareness and environmental sustainability on a different level, par excellence in Egypt. So it is all an integrated program that pulls in various sectors of the requirements of an economic growth and a robust country growing, looking into its future, maintaining the relationship between the people and their country, particularly the young people and their country. The Hayat Karima does not only touch on housing and food and shelter, like I mentioned, but it also on the environment, on the canals, on the roads, on the main infrastructure around reaching those 4,000 villages, and not only reaching those 4,000 villages, but also the agricultural infrastructure needed to enhance the workforce and the already available work opportunities in agriculture that also project and fall into Egyptian plans of the food security for everybody. So it's really an integrated plan of social integrated plan, but also of economic sustainability and growth.
Doctor, you've raised a very important point, which is the Hayat Karima, for example. It is not just targeting the economic conditions of people living outside of Cairo and Alexandria and the big cities, but it is maybe impacting as well the infrastructure for agriculture, as you've mentioned. How do you see the importance of what happened in the past 8 years under the tenure of President Al-Sisi to be focusing on building new roads, building new bridges, constructing new cities as a whole, constructing a new capital, the monorail, the electric train, all those infrastructure elements?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer in a few minutes, but I'll try and keep it very brief and short.
Yes.
What is happening in Egypt at the moment, the country, the current Egyptian state has injected and has created construction and infrastructure projects worth of 8 trillion Egyptian pounds. And I will translate that in dollars. It is nearly $500 billion. That's over the past 7 years. And this equals around 15,000 different projects, 7,500 of which in the region of 700, 500 of which are totally completed. And Hayat Karima is but one. The new capital is another. There are over 15,000 projects of various walks of building a new nation and changing the actual reality for the Egyptian people. First, on an economical level, the $500 billion spent over the last 7 years, this on average from 20 to 30% of that amount has been allocated for labor, for technical support, for people working within those projects. And this money has been injected directly and indirectly into the Egyptian economic situation, the Egyptian economic market, the various markets. If you have a laborer working from Suhail in a project, in a road project or a bridge project or a construction project or the Dab'a project, anywhere in Egypt, he takes his salary and sends it back to his family in Suhail, and they use this salary to buy food, to buy clothes, and to buy the necessities of their family. And so this is money directly funneled back into the communities, the various communities around Egypt. This is number one. So this is really projects that are and have changing the reality of the Egyptian situation and the reality of the life of Egyptian people. And so this is for on an economic level. On an agricultural level, the number of feddans and of agricultural land that has been added into, on average, ever since Egypt's ancient pharaonic times, we have had on average 8.5 million feddans cultivated in Egypt. Today, as we speak, we have currently 12.5 million feddans, amounting to 15 in another 2.5 years' time. So you are talking about nearly a 40% increase in the cultivated lands of Egypt. And this on itself projects on food security of Egypt. So we are maintaining strategic food products to make sure that the Egyptian people are well fed with their own abilities and from their own land. So it's really an integrated project of an integrated state vision of growth, of development, and all of this is integrated within the concept of sustainability and environmental awareness, and creating a better Egypt for the young people of today and the leaders and citizens of tomorrow.
Yes, Dr. May, and speaking of those achievements in different fields, more specifically after the coronavirus pandemic and more recently the Russian-Ukrainian war, how do you see the success of the Egyptian government in dealing with those crises that took place not just for the Egyptians or for Egypt or for Africa, but for the whole world?
Well, what is happening in the world and its projection on Egypt, Egypt is changing, I keep mentioning, changing the reality for Egyptian people within Egypt and changing the reality of Egypt for people looking at Egypt around the world. During the corona pandemic, during the COVID-19 pandemic, whenever we mentioned that the situation in Egypt was better, there were always doubts. The government or officials, people like myself, we are not projecting the right image. There was still doubt. But after the pandemic and after going through a crisis, a world crisis such as the COVID, and having the results that we've had in Egypt in terms of the medical infrastructure, in terms of having full hospitals, there was a makeshift corona hospital done with a capacity of over 4,000 beds that has not been used in Egypt, alhamdulillah. And when we look at pictures from countries, great countries around the world, with having sick people sleeping in parking lots and not having enough medical supplies, looking at Egypt sending medical supplies, gloves, masks, vaccines around the world to the modern well-developed countries and also to our African friends. This really has positioned Egypt within a world crisis into a country, a proactive country, a country that is capable of taking care of its own people and using its resources responsibly to help out citizens around the world. So Egypt has played as a global responsible player on a very important level during the COVID crisis. And what is happening also during the Ukraine-Russian crisis at the moment, Egypt not only has maintained the new reality for its people into supplying the basic strategic requirements of food and electricity and all of the infrastructure needed for the Egyptian people for those coming difficult times of the world, but also Egypt has used it very well, strategically thought and built and invested in infrastructure and resources like electricity to help alleviate the situation in Europe, to help alleviate situations for people around the world. So we have a very important access of exporting electricity via Cyprus, yes, and via Cyprus to Greece, and to Greece and via Greece to the European Union. And this will help a great deal into alleviating the situation for our North European friends, north of the Mediterranean European friends. And also we have a huge project related to gas, using the European Union and our Israeli neighbors as well, and also helping the heating situation to keep Europe warm during the winter. Yes. So we have looked for our own people, and we have acted responsibly using our strategically developed resources to alleviate the situation on an international level.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you very, very much.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Mayel Batran, the former member of Parliament. Thank you very much once again for being with us on Nile TV International and the Daily Debate. We will be heading for the second report of the episode for tonight, which is the statements made by His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in the past week or so to be giving or dispersing about 11 billion Egyptian pounds for about 9 million families to be preserving the identity of the Egyptian family. We'll be having more details on this in the upcoming report.
Minister of Social Solidarity Niveen Qabbaj said that President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi attaches special importance to preserving Egyptian families and improving citizens' quality of life across various spheres. Qabbaj also said that several categories have been included in the ministry's support programs, adding that great attention is being given to amending the needed legislation to protect kafala families. Most of those covered by the social protection umbrella have been included in the Takaful and Karama program. The program now includes new segments of society, including breadwinners, those above 65 years old, people with disabilities, people suffering from illness, and orphans. Qabbaj added that efforts are underway to issue a unified law and program for social aid to include all eligible citizens. Regarding the suggested legislative amendments that aim to support kafala mothers, the minister affirmed that these amendments mainly aim to make adoption more accessible and widespread. The minister also discussed the ministry's efforts in supporting female breadwinners and individuals with special needs. The ministry has increased its allocations to people with special needs to 5 billion Egyptian pounds, representing 27% of all cash support. Qabbaj added that female breadwinners obtain 19% of all cash support. Moreover, the ministry is keen on supporting Egypt's most vulnerable women to enable them to overcome any difficulties they may face. Consequently, new centers affiliated with the ministry dubbed Working Women Centers have been established to provide the necessary care for the elderly and people with special needs, a matter which all alleviate the burden on women.